This podcast is brought to you by Three Rivers Energy Partners. In today's episode of Digest This.
Over the next 3 years, global consumption is expected to rise by an unprecedented 3,500 terawatt hours.
Wholesale electricity prices in both the EU and the US jumped 30 to 40% compared to the same period last year.
The IEA's report is pretty clear. Renewables are about to overtake coal as the world's largest source of electricity.
Welcome to Digest This, Unpacking Our Sustainable Future, where we dive deep into the latest developments in sustainability and renewable energy. Join us in exploring the pioneering solutions and technologies that are shaping our future. Now, let's dive into today's episode.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Digest This, Unpacking Our Sustainable Future. I'm Alex, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Emily. Emily, how are you doing today?
Hey, Alex, I'm good. Excited for this one. I mean, the numbers coming out of the IEA lately are just wild. Global electricity demand is set to keep growing at one of the fastest sustained paces we've seen in over a decade. Despite all the economic headwinds out there, it's kind of mind-boggling, honestly.
Yeah, it's not just a blip either. The International Energy Agency's latest update says we're looking at demand rising by 3.3% in 2025 and 3.7% in 2026. They mention that's more than double the growth rate for total energy demand. And, it's not just one thing driving this. It's industry, data centers, electric vehicles, all the appliances and air conditioning as more people get access to them worldwide. It's like every sector is plugging in at once.
Exactly. And the data center piece is especially interesting. I was reading that data centers' share of China's electricity demand could actually double between 2025 and 2027, hitting around 6%. And it's not just China. AI, cloud computing, all that stuff is putting new strains on grids everywhere.
Yeah, and it's not slowing down. I saw a stat that over the next 3 years, global consumption is expected to rise by an unprecedented 3,500 terawatt hours. That's basically like adding another Japan to the world's electricity use every single year. I mean, that's just wow.
And what's wild is that 85% of that new demand is coming from emerging and developing nations. China and India alone are expected to drive about 60% of the increase in global electricity consumption over the next couple years. Meanwhile, the US is seeing its own surge, mostly from, you guessed it, data centers. Annual demand growth here is expected to stay above 2% in both 2025 and 2026, which is more than double the average for the past decade.
And Europe, on the other hand, is kind of lagging. Their electricity consumption is only set to grow about 1% this year, though maybe they'll see a little bump in 2026. But, it's a totally different story depending on where you look. And honestly, it all comes back to this question. Can our infrastructure keep up?
Yeah, and that's the million-dollar question. One of the biggest challenges is scaling up fast enough. You can have all the demand in the world, but if you don't have the wires, the substations, the flexibility, you're just not going to deliver. And with this kind of growth, the stakes are higher than ever.
So let's talk about how we're actually meeting all this new demand. The IEA's report is pretty clear. Renewables are about to overtake coal as the world's largest source of electricity, maybe as soon as next year, or by 2026 at the latest. That's a huge milestone. And at the same time, nuclear output is expected to be hitting record highs, especially with reactor restarts in Japan and new builds in Asia. It's like the whole mix is shifting right under our feet.
Yeah, and don't forget natural gas. It's still edging out coal and oil in a lot of regions, especially as a sort of bridge fuel. But the real story is that renewables, nuclear, and gas are all having to step up at once. And honestly, it's not just about building more wind and solar farms. It's about making the whole system more flexible, investing in storage, demand response, and, of course, the grid itself. Otherwise, you end up with all this clean power that can't actually get to where it's needed.
Absolutely, and that's precisely the strength of our approach at Three Rivers Energy Partners. Our plug-and-play solutions are tailored specifically to integrate with each company's existing operations, simplifying the adoption of renewable energy without disrupting reliability. The renewable natural gas, RNG, we produce is physically injected directly into local pipelines, delivering renewable energy right into the local communities where it's produced, particularly benefiting areas that might otherwise lack access to renewable resources. This strategy allows our partners to seamlessly decarbonize while contributing to the sustainability of their local energy infrastructure.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the technology, it's about the business model. Like, how do you make the economics work when prices can swing so much, especially with all this new supply coming online? And as we talked about in our episode on storage innovation, you need those investments in batteries and other flexible resources to really unlock the value of renewables. And I'm going to toot our own horn here again for a minute. A statement that we live by is, for a sustainability project to be truly sustainable, it needs to be financially sustainable. There are so many projects that rely heavily on government programs, or for all companies involved, to take on new financial and operational burdens. We've seen this over and over again, which is why we deploy a build, own, operate model that takes that burden off of the companies we obtain the organic waste from to make our energy.
That's right. Another critical component is the length of contracts. These markets can be volatile, which is why we focus on long-term contracts. It gives all parties involved the ability to plan for the future. Yeah, and the IEA is pretty blunt about what we are talking about. If we don't match the growth in renewables and nuclear with greater investment in grids, storage, and flexibility, we're not going to meet demand securely or affordably. It's not just about building more generation, it's about making the whole system smarter and more resilient. We need better business solutions across the board to move things forward.
And it's interesting because as renewables and nuclear expand, we're actually expected to see carbon emissions from electricity generation plateau, maybe even decline slightly by 2026. But that's only if we keep up the momentum on the grid and storage side. Otherwise, we could end up with a lot of stranded assets or missed climate targets. So let's dig into those regional differences a bit more. Like we said earlier, Asia, especially China and India, is driving most of the global demand growth. China's electricity demand is expected to grow by about 6% annually for the next few years, and India even faster, at 6.6% next year. That's just massive. Meanwhile, the US is seeing its own surge, mostly from data centers, but the EU is kind of stuck in the slow lane with only about 1% growth this year.
And that slow growth in the EU is actually creating some real challenges for their industries. Electricity prices for energy-intensive sectors in the EU are still double what they are in the US, and way higher than in China. That's a huge competitiveness issue. I mean, if you're running a steel mill or a chemical plant, those price differences can make or break your business model.
Yeah, and it's not just about high prices, it's about volatility too. In the first half of 2025, wholesale electricity prices in both the EU and the US jumped 30 to 40% compared to the same period last year, mostly because of higher natural gas prices. And, interestingly, we're seeing more and more instances of negative wholesale prices, especially in markets with lots of renewables. That means, at certain times, there's actually too much supply and not enough demand, so prices go negative. It's kind of counterintuitive, but it really highlights the need for more flexibility in the system.
Yeah, and that's where policy comes in. We need regulatory frameworks and market designs that encourage demand response and storage. Otherwise, we're just going to keep running into these mismatches. And, as we talked about in our episode on grid transformation, it's not just about building more stuff. It's about making the system smarter so we can actually use all this new clean power when and where it's needed.
Exactly. And honestly, it's going to take a mix of solutions, policy, technology, business innovation to get there. But if we can pull it off, we could see a more resilient, affordable, and low-carbon grid that actually supports economic growth instead of holding it back.
Well, that's a good note to end on. The demand is rising, the grid is shifting, and the stakes are only getting higher. But as always, there's a lot of opportunity if we get the details right. Emily, thanks for the great conversation today.
Thanks, Alex, and thanks to everyone listening. We'll be back soon to unpack more of the big changes shaping our sustainable future. Take care, Alex.
You too, Emily. And thanks, everyone. See you next time on Digest This, Unpacking Our Sustainable Future. Thank you for listening to Digest This, Unpacking Our Sustainable Future, a Three Rivers Energy Partners podcast. Three Rivers Energy Partners is a renewable energy company that empowers organizations with the ability to create a sustainable future by converting organic waste streams into renewable energy and resources. To get the latest episode of Digest This, or to find out more about Three Rivers Energy Partners, visit threeriversenergy.com or find us on LinkedIn, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. The sustainable future is being created right now. Keep exploring and keep up to speed with the latest in renewable energy and sustainability. See you next time.